Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot. I'm a real world airline pilot, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the upcoming, or very soon to be released, actually probably released by the time you've seen this video, BlackSquare. This is the Beechcraft Baron for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024. This is launching alongside the BlackSquare Bonanza. So both of those aircraft we've seen before from BlackSquare as sort of updated cockpits, and these are now full models. So that is very, very nice to see. And like I say, this is the Baron, of course, the twin engine variant, the Bonanza being the single engine aircraft that we know and love. So what we're going to do today is just see some of those details, see how it's translated into Flight Simulator 2024, and also take it for a flight, of course, and just look for that attention to detail that we know BlackSquare for. The original aircraft that or the analog updates that BlackSquare released for these were not obviously full models, so this is a full aircraft now, and we get to enjoy things like the new tablet, the simulations of the vapor lock, and all sorts of details going on into the engine simulations, the physics simulations going on behind the scenes to get the systems to run properly. And that might sound like it's not too important, but there are lots of fun things you can do with that, and really interesting things that just sort of teach you about aviation, especially of this style of aviation. I've chosen to take the Baron for a spin today. I have a real thing for twin-engine piston aircraft. I like them a lot. I do also like having two engines. I spend my life flying two-engine aircraft, obviously, for my day job, and as a result, I have a real affinity for that. I know that twin-engine aircraft are obviously not always popular with private pilots. Some pilots don't enjoy the extra work that can be associated with having two engines. Obviously, much more expense and maintenance and fuel costs. And finally, if you do have an engine failure, some pilots don't like having to deal with a single engine aircraft. They'd rather deal with a twin engine aircraft on one engine. They'd rather ditch a single engine aircraft due to handling difficulties. But that depends on the pilot, of course, and their preference and how much exposure they have to it. But the Baron is a very capable twin engine aircraft. There are a few variants, so I'll show you those as well, and we'll take it for a flight here in St. Martin. So first of all, here's the three variants you get. You get the Beechcraft Baron 58 Professional. This is the long fuselage version of the Baron. Then you get the Baron 58 TC, which is the 58 turbocharged, and then you get the Baron 58P, which is the pressurized. So these two have slightly more powerful engines. For the pressurized version, they're both turbocharged actually, but the turbocharged is not pressurized. The pressurized is, obviously. So I'm going to take the Professional with the pressurization and the turbochargers. Why not? And you get a few liveries with each one. Let's just have a quick look just to see through this awful 2024 system. I don't like it at all, but there we go. So you can see pretty similar sort of standard livery choices available for an aircraft like this. And again, this whole system, honestly. But there we go. So let's get going. Like I say, we'll take up the pressurized version. So let's go for a walk around on our lovely pressurized Baron. Now, this aircraft is an accurate exterior model. These are custom 3D models for all three variants. So now you have the correct engine cowlings and markings and cabin door for the pressurized variant, or the turbocharged, or the regular. So that's really great to see. And as you walk around, you can see lots of nice rivets. Love the 3D modeling, and then the different textures as you move along. It's very nice. Again, I always like to see really grimy general aviation aircraft. This is sort of getting up into a slightly posher territory. I mean, if you could afford one of these, you're doing pretty well for yourself, and you can probably pay someone to keep it clean. But even so, I like to see bits of oil and streaks and bug splatters on them. This is a very clean airplane. However, nice model. You've got the little decals, and it's all very high resolution, I must say. I do like it. There you go. Oh, look, you can even plug in the ground power by clicking on it. Ha! Love that. Shouldn't need that today, so I'll just forget that if I leave it out there, so we'll do that. You can see the cow doors hanging down there. Here's our lovely engines. So these are slightly more powerful, just over 300 horsepower on each engine, and like I say, turbocharged. Nice. I do like the look of the Baron. It's a very proportional aeroplane. I suppose I probably like the look of it because I've spent so much time. Oh, there you go. That's more like it. Yeah, you see all the muck and grime on the inner part of that leading edge. I suppose the black rubber has absorbed most of it on the outer part. So fair enough. That's nice to see. I like that. And as we come around the nose, yeah, it's just a nice airplane. And like I say, I think part of my like for it comes from spending so much time with it in Microsoft Flight Simulator X back in the day, as it were. There we go. Oh, we jumped through. Some different textures as well on the exterior bit. I can't believe how much effort went into this walk around feature when you actually see the pilot sort of bobbing up and down the camera as you walk. Oh dear. Yeah, so we've got different textures for the grip tape to walk on, and no step when you go outside. Yeah, it all looks very nice indeed. This is a nice looking airplane. I like this livery. I do like this livery a lot. I think it's probably what I'd have ordered mine in if I could choose. So let's get ourselves inside and get this airplane up and running, and we're going to take it for a short flight. Here we are in the cockpit. Now this is quite familiar territory. You know, we've seen Barons for a long time, like I was saying, and Flight Simulator X was where I spent a lot of time flying Barons around as part of those missions. But in here we have the classic BlackSquare, this new tablet that was introduced with the piston and turbine Duke. So in here we can choose our options, including how we want the avionics set up. I've gone for a slightly old school version here, but you can select a new one and have the full size GPS if you fancy. Depends what sort of flying you're planning to do with this. There you go. But I'm going to put it back to the 530. You can choose some other options such as the cloud strobe effect, where you want the tablet if you're using VR. Lots of attention to detail in this aircraft that you'll see as we go through. Just understanding things that will actually affect you when you operate these aircraft in Flight Simulator. So this is how it's loaded up by default, and that's what I'm going to go for. And like I say, I've downgraded my avionics slightly to a more my level of GPS. I struggle with fancy Garmin systems because I just don't get to use them. The technology I fly with every day at work on a Boeing 777 at the moment, that is obviously 1980s, 1990s technology. It's not up to date with the latest that you see in general aviation, which can move quite a bit quicker than the airline world. You can obviously go into payload, adjust the payload you've got, but I think that's going to be more than enough fuel for what we're doing today. And put in your chocks and pitot covers like you saw in the introduction. Open up some of those doors outside. And we're going to look at the rest of these simulation features once we get the engines up and running. Now, again, attention to detail is a big thing, so you will have to remove the covers, and then you see it gets stowed down there, and you can, of course, get rid of the yoke. But what we need to do is power up the airplane and get it up and running. Now, there are checklists included, which I always look for in the EFB that we get in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and these are obviously very long, and I'm not actually going to go through them fully today because it will take a fair old while to run through every single item on this checklist. They're very long, as they typically are with general aviation airplanes, because they're more like instructions. Checklists on airliners are much shorter because you've done a lot of switching as part of flows, they call it. So what we're really trying to achieve here is making sure that the airplane is safe to turn on and operate. And there are a few things that are worth doing. Check your parking brake is set. That is very important because if it isn't, you're going to roll away. So I'm going to make sure the parking brake is set. This little lever out here needs to be pulled. Oh, the first officer is coming to help us. That's good. And then we are also, obviously, make sure your circuit breakers are all in, throttles are closed, but we want the propellers at high RPM, and we want the mixture at full rich. So what we're doing here is obviously making sure that the engine's going to get fuel, and you start the engines at high RPM because that is sort of this fine position. So that makes sense. That's easier to turn through the air. Not that I don't think it makes too much difference. I think it probably managed, but there we go. Cowl flaps need to be fully open. Those are down here. So if it's up, it's closed, down, it's open. That is the little flap underneath the engine that we saw in the walk around. That's this, and that's going to allow more air to be drawn through because obviously sitting still, the engine could get a bit warm if we're not careful with it. Next, moving down, make sure your trims are all centered, which they should be. Like I say, you're going to check your circuit breakers and things like your CO2 detector. Lots and lots of things that you would check and test. Cabin pressurization mode dump, that is going to be quite important today because we have a pressurized aircraft. And you'll see that this stuff is all simulated. So if we go over to our little cabin pressurization, that's all over here. And then I'm going to go to dump. And you see that's pressurization, that's dump. So effectively, we're not pressurizing the airplane yet. You don't want it to do that at all at this point. Most certainly not. Good, so that's all dumped and off. And then we're going to turn on our battery. So here's where we actually get the airplane up and running. So battery on, it springs to life. And if we open the EFB, we can go to electric page. See the gyroscope springing to life over there as well. Love that. That must be electrically run, that one then. And you can see what's come to life. You can see the battery capacity and its connections to the rest of the circuit. Love it. So the battery's on. Obviously, things like the gear selector, you need to check that was down. But again, these are all checks that we know the simulator loads up in a roughly right position. So we're going to put the beacon light on as well. That's down there. That should be up on the tail, and that will just tell people around that the airplane is now coming to life. Yep, gently rotating back there. And I'm going to put on the alternators, ready for when the engines start. So that's good. We've got enough fuel in our tanks. We did check that on AFB. That's down there, and you can also see the fuel quantity over there. It's about half, so that's pretty good. And cabin heater not desired. Left boost pump low, and we're going to just check it runs, and then the right boost pump. So these are the fuel boost pumps. I'll just turn up the audio. That's good. That's good. So we can hear those running. So next we go on to engine start. This is a cold engine start. There is a big difference. I'll show you later. The vapor lock that you can get if you have the engines hot, running hot, and then you just turn them off and then try and start them within a sort of a short time frame, within a couple of hours, then you can vapor lock them quite easily. They can be quite tricky to start. Anyway, let's start them cold. So right mixture, full rich, right propeller, full RPM, right throttle, full open, and then we're going to put the right boost pump onto high for 1, 2, 3, and you can see there fuel going into the line. It's a little much. So you can see now fuel has been sprayed into the cylinders, and you can actually see that on this simulation. The left engine does not have any fuel. No fuel in this line, no fuel in the cylinders. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just move that out of the way, and then we can actually keep it there. Good, so now we have a bit of fuel in there. So let us open that right throttle just a little bit, and we can engage the starter. Oh, I knew that would happen as soon as I do that. So we're on the right engine. Let's see it spring to life. Starter's down here. Those are the magnetos. And start. And there it goes. Give it a little bit of throttle. Make sure it can stay running. And that's the engine up and running. Right throttle 1000 to 1200 RPM. So it needs a little more. You don't want to sit it running at idle or too cold. It can just not be very comfortable for it. And now it's warming up gently, and you can see the left engine is completely off. How great is that? Check the start alternator light is out. We're going to check that the right alternator light is running. So these are lights up here. So the left alternator is on, the right alternator light is out. So that is working. So these systems pages are working up here, which is great. And as we go through, we're just going to do the next left engine. What does this say? Greater than 3 gallons per hour. Oh yeah, you make sure the fuel flow. Okay, so we're going to start the left engine, check all the things are working, and check the instruments are running, and that's it. Great, and then we'll run the after start. So let's start the left engine. So we're going to do the same old thing. I'm going to just squeeze some fuel in. So let's open the throttle. 1, 2, 3, and now you can see a bit of fuel in the cylinders, fuel in the line. Bring it back to sort of a starting position there, and let's get that engine up and running. Didn't work. Why didn't that work? Let's try again. There it goes. Give me a bit of throttle to get it to the same sort of position. We're at 1000 RPM. Awesome. Love it, love it, love it. And we'll look at this turbocharger once we're in flight as well. I want to show you that. Great. After engine start, let's get rid of this tablet. Let's put on some lights. We're going to have the nav lights, panel lights, taxi lights. Put those on. We're about to get going. We'll do the strobes later on. Avionics can now come online. So let us power on. Oh, I'm so bad at avionics. Power on what I can figure out how to power on. How about that as a starting point? We can definitely get the transponder on shortly. Oh no, I think we need to put an actual switch on for avionics. There we go. Avionics master. There we go. That'd be easy, wouldn't it? So get the avionics master switch on, cabin air and heat, air conditioning, mixture. You can just set it up for the taxi. I'm going to just leave it at full rich, and parking brake, and we get taxiing. Great. And then it'll be up for us to take off, so we can actually pressurize the cabin before we get going, and we'll leave the boost pumps off for takeoff, interestingly. I did not know that. Something I like is you can actually see the aircraft jostling. If you look at the wingtip, it's just gently rocking up and down with the sort of the wash of the propellers, which is something that twin-engine aircraft do. I love twin-engine pistons. Firstly, you don't have a propeller in front of you blocking your view. Secondly, you get the nice big reassurance of seeing two engines out there, and then you have all the power and performance you could want. So let's start up our GPSs. I'm not going to use them today. We're going to take off and do some visual flying around the island, and once we're in the air, we'll look at some some actual navigation, but it's very standard stuff on this airplane. These airplanes are really straightforward in lots of ways, which is nice. You need to obviously pay attention and get things done properly, especially when it comes to the engine management. Like I said, it's easy to vapor lock these engines or anything like that. But anyway, let's get the parking brake released. We're rolling. We'll avoid hitting that tug there, and we'll get ourselves out onto the runway and go for a classic flight out here in St Martin, which I absolutely love. I haven't flown here for a while on the channel. There you can see when I drop the throttles to idle, it complains about the alternators and the low voltage. So perhaps that's one reason why we shouldn't keep them right down there. Right, now before we enter the runway, I'm just going to set the brake here. Let's get the strobe lights on as we're ready to go. I'll get the landing lights on, strobe lights on. I haven't got any ice to worry about here. What I will do is put the cabin pressure, and this airplane, this is the, like I say, the pressurized version. So this airplane can go, pretty high. The cruising listed that I found was at 20,000 feet, which is quite impressive. And I have taken this up to 20,000 feet. So if I set the cabin altitude to 20,000, which I've done there, it does remember a lot of things between flights. So I'm quite impressed. Then the pressurization system on, and the door seals are pressurized. The cabin can now pressurize, which is good news. And I'm going to set my course bar for the runway, and let's just bring up the charts actually. So we're going to take off from St Martin, and of course we're going to fly down to St Barts. That's what I would like to do with my fancy pants airplane. So I'm going to take off. We're going to then head outbound from the St Martin VOR on about, let's start at 150 degrees, so the 150 radial, which will be something like this down here, and that should send us in the right direction for St Barts. And then we'll use the GPS once we're underway to confirm that. So we're just going to do a little backtrack, and then we'll take off. In fact, I'm sure we could take off halfway down this runway, but do a little backtrack and take off from the easterly facing runway, head out over the island, and then make our turn. And we'll climb up as high as we can. We'll do some single engine testing. We'll test the stalling of the airplane and more of the avionics and system simulation. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's get the brakes released, and we'll head onto the runway. Now, I'm not entirely sure what we're supposed to do with the cowl flaps at this point in the process. So I'm going to leave them fully open, and then we'll close them up once we get underway. Because I don't want the engines getting too hot during the takeoff. It's been a while since we've been back here. This is great. Very happy to be back. I'm going to wind into my altitude arm selector, 20,000 feet, just so we can say we made it. Because I think that's absolutely mad in an airplane like this, but there you go. What else should we do? Well, you can consult the checklist. So before takeoff, cabin pressure, we've done those depressed, mixture is at maximum, oil temperature 24 degrees minimum. So remember all your oil information down here. You got your pressures and your temperatures, and they're well above 40 degrees, so there's absolutely no trouble there. Boost pumps are off, air conditioning off, landing lights on, transponder, yeah, let's get that into alt mode if I know how to do that on this thing. That's navigation. This is a transponder, obviously. There we go. And I think it's on. On. There we go. On out. Perfect. Oh dear, it's embarrassing sometimes. And with the radar, we're not going to use that today. But there is this instrument over here. I'm not... There we go. Let's see if it picks anything up. Good. Right, take off. We're going to go full throttles. And then we can monitor everything as we go, and then set the appropriate power settings for climb and cruise. Great. Nice detailed scenery here. So remember, we're going to take off and then go to the 150 radial. So if I set the course bar to 150 now, then that's what we're going to intercept. I have a video on how to track needles. If you would like to know what I'm doing here, then do please watch that. I show you in an Airbus how you can do it. So I'm going to set the autopilot or flight director sort of navigation system control to nav, and then I'm going to tune the VOR here onto the 150. So that's 113.0. So if I tune that, 1130, so that is the TNCM VOR tuned, Papa Juliet Mike. We're on the 076 radial. I've got the 150 outbound showing on here, and what I'm going to do, first of all, let's get the airplane ready to go, is I'm going to take off and then make our right turn to intercept that. Love it. Now, one thing we can do is, if I just to show you, I skipped the run-up here in this video. The run-up is a long checklist for good reason. This is something you have to do on general aviation. Again, not something we do on commercial airliners. But in this, you would do things like run up the engines, exercise the RPM. So I can actually do that for you. So you set the throttle to 1700 RPM, RPM's down here, and then you exercise the propeller. So you're checking that it does coarsen and drop, which you can see like that. Again, we're going to see more of this throughout the video as we go through the systems, and then you test the alternators, check that those are working, check the heating's working, check the windshield heat, the propeller heat, check the pressurization system. It's quite something. For example, the pitot heat, I should probably turn those on just in case we fly through a shower anyway. Although, look at that, it actually gives us an annunciator when they're on. That's quite interesting. And finally, it does say in here something that we haven't done, which is to set the flaps. So I'm going to put them just one stage for takeoff. I'm not entirely sure what you would do as standard, but I think that seems pretty sensible. We've got our autopilot set up as we would want it. I'll just bring the heading bug around to face where we're going as well. You also need to make sure you get full and free yoke movement, because this is a very important check. It won't be very obvious if you hide it like I did there, and if you have the control lock installed on this aircraft like that, it's not going to move. That's what you're going to get. So well worth checking that that does work. And also you can see outside the controls moving. Excellent. Pleased to say as well, the icing boots do inflate. You can see them there. Those are inflated and then they de-inflate like that. So I've set it, if I set it to the auto mode, or you can just force it on like that and it should inflate. Yeah, there you go. Did for a second. And then it goes back to off. So nice to see that model on the visual model as well. I'm always looking for that because those boots are quite a physical thing. Okay, it's time to go then. So, trim's in the green range, parking brakes released. We're going full throttle. We got our flaps out at one stage. I'm going to let you listen to the roar of those engines. Now, you don't need to stabilize piston engines like you do jet engines, because they tend to rev up pretty well. There we go, full power, and we are roaring along. The first time you take off in a twin engine aircraft, you'll know it's such a great feeling. And let's rotate there. Oh, a bit fast. Wow, it really wanted to go. Positive rate. And you do wait in these aircraft. Some pilots will wait till no usable runway. We're not going to land back on that runway straight ahead now. So let's bring those gear up. Neatly tucked away. And we're climbing straight out over the island. There's 500 feet. I don't want to fly straight at this hill here. So we'll start our gentle right turn now. And you can see we're out climbing that hill quite easily. Going to need a bit of forward trim. And let's bring the flaps up as we have accelerated. We are sailing through the speed limits. Awesome. I've spent so many happy hours flying around this part of the world in Flight Simulator. Love it. So we're still turning, still accelerating. We're going to come up to 2,000 feet now. The rate of climb absolutely ridiculous. 3,000 feet per minute, no trouble at all. So I'm going to put us on an intercept heading here. We're going to point towards that radial, and then we're going to adjust our settings for the engines to be a sort of en route climb setting. Which is something we have here, because you can't run the engines at full power like this. It's very bad for them. So en route climb, mixture, max power. So at the moment I've got them fully rich. Propeller, we need 2,500 RPM. That's shown up here. So let's just reduce each propeller to 2,500. These are constant speed propellers, so they will sit at 2,500, and then no matter what I do with the throttles, as long as they can, as long as there's enough energy in the engine, they will sit at 2,500. And finally, we're going to set 36 inches on the manifold pressure. This is the pressure of the air and fuel, therefore, going into the engine. So 36 on this, 2,500 RPM. This is our en route climb. We're doing 1,000 feet per minute. We've accelerated to almost 150 knots. And we're heading out to intercept our radial. Leaving St. Martin behind us. I'm going to trim those down a bit because it's still trying to rise on me, which I don't want it to do. And we'll just accelerate a little bit more. Great. Engine performance monitor. Cabin pressure monitor, we shall do, and cowl flaps as required. So, lots going on here. Something that would really help us would be an autopilot. So let's turn that on, So I can engage the flight director on our little panel here. This brings into life. I'm going to put it on heading because we have our heading bug out there. And I'm going to press autopilot engage. Now it's flying that heading. Now I also want it to climb to 20,000 feet. So I'm going to engage vertical speed mode. It's doing 500 feet per minute, which is about what we were doing. And I'm going to arm 20,000, which is already armed. So there we go. Actually, let's make it 18 so we don't have to bother with the transition altitude, which I think is still that here. Now you can see we're intercepting our radial. It's coming in. We're pointing away from the VOR and it's just off to our right. So all I need to do now is arm nav mode and the airplane will intercept the radial and fly on the 150 outbound. So I'll let it do that. And here we go. We're accelerating, so we don't need to be going this fast forward. So I can press up down here and it will increase the vertical speed on the autopilot. Up, 1,000. And obviously down, would reduce it. So we'll do 1,000 feet per minute for now. In fact, I think we can do a bit more. We can probably get away with 1,200 feet per minute. This is a monster of an airplane. It is not like we're used to, not the general aviation we're used to. We are just roaring away. Good stuff. So what I want to do now is show you that we can see the engine simulation. You can see how hot this cylinder is getting, really quite hot actually on this side. They're all running pretty warm. See the engine condition as well? That is reduced because I messed around before this video to try and see if I could cause the engines some damage. So I was revving them and so on and running them very hot and then turning them off. And what was interesting was the condition even reduced after I'd stopped the engines. So it's not just a time thing, it is done by what you do to the engine. And by running it so badly, I managed to do some serious damage to them. But of course, you can just repair the engine. So they're running very, very hot. If we were to take fuel away from them, it would potentially make them even hotter. So if let's go to the left engine, and you'll see, look at that. If I lean the fuel, the cylinder head temperatures are rising. You can see that simulated over here. So this is the cylinder head, which is obviously pretty much the hottest part. It's where the explosions happen. So what's going on is by leaning the fuel out, there's less fuel in there and it's just overheating. That there isn't enough evaporation and transfer of energy. So if I put that back to rich, that will hopefully cool that engine back down a little bit. You'll notice that running the engine like this is not actually causing it any damage. We are doing the right thing. It's just the nature. It is running hot. We're climbing. I'm going to close up the cloud flaps now as well, which you can see the flap up here, and as I move the lever down here, it's sort of directly related. I don't think we're going to have any need for that once we're climbing up here. And we're going so fast through the air, the engine's getting lots of air. Okay, if we zoom out on our navigation display, you can see that I've totally missed my target. There's St. Barts. It's much closer than I imagined. It's actually just out of our left window here. So we're going to carry on doing a bit of climbing and talking about the aircraft before we go and fly our approach into St. Barts. But yeah, that just shows you sort of the speed and power of this airplane. It just gets itself underway. Look at this, 150 plus knots. We're doing 1,200 feet per minute climb. We're already through 7,000 feet. This is a very capable touring airplane. You can have good fun with this. Big thing to check is the pressurization, of course. We are in a pressurized airplane. Very, very exciting. So I'm terrible at these, but I'm going to lower that now to say we're going to climb to 18,000 feet. So on this inner dial, I'm putting the aircraft altitude, 18,000 feet. You can see that the airplane is climbing the cabin because it's doing 500 feet per minute climb on here. And we can tell it's pressurizing because we have a differential pressure on this display. So the cabin altitude is currently, 3,000 feet. We are, of course, at 8,000 feet. So it has a differential of just over 2 psi. So that's great. You'll see that we don't really want to go over 3 and a bit psi. Modern airliners go over 8 psi, just for context. So it is pressurized, but it's not as strong as obviously an airliner, as you would expect. This was not originally a pressurized airplane. So that's all very nice, and that means that things are going well, because also we can see the cabin's climbing at 500 feet per minute, but we're climbing, as we know, 1,200 feet per minute. So clearly there's a difference. Now here's a fun feature. If you go to the cabin, notice it's still 74%. So despite it running hot, that's just the nature of climbing the aircraft. If we go to the cabin, we can actually see some of this information. You can see how the air is being divided up and sent in, and the temperature being sent into the cabin and so on. Why is it so cold? I want a bit warmer than that. Let's put some hot air in. How do I do that? I did see a cabin pressurization air shut off. We're not going to shut it off. Cabin heat, pull to increase. Pilot air, pull to increase. Let's try that. Not sure if that's going to achieve much. This is a bit beyond my knowledge of the aircraft. so I can only apologise for that. But what we do have here is an ear discomfort setting. This is not a noise issue, because this would be a noisy aeroplane, no doubt, sitting between these two propellers. But this is to do with the aircraft's pressurization. Of note is that you can see the aircraft altitude and the cabin altitude on this little display. This is a really neat display, and it shows you what you've set it to. I'm not sure why, but I can't manage to get the ear discomfort to go red no matter what I do, because I'm certain that dumping the cabin pressure would hurt your ears. I've spoken to pilots who have had that happen to them, and apparently everything goes very muffled and it can be very painful. But certainly descending is more commonly where people who have blocked ears or colds feel it the worst, but even so. Anyway, we shall see if that changes at any point. It could just be a bug in this preview build. I'm not entirely sure. So we are going to climb back up and have a look at single engine. Whilst the airplane continues its climb, let's have a quick look at the navigation. So obviously we're flying outbound on our VOR in nav mode. I can obviously put it into heading mode and just have the airplane fly the heading bug, which is a perfectly nice way to fly an airplane. And of course we can have it fly approach, so it could actually fly an ILS for us. We can tune our NDBs down here. I love these old school displays, I much prefer it, but that's of course just me. And like I said earlier, we've got the Papa Juliet Mike VOR that we're heading outbound from here. Now, what I can do is put in, obviously, waypoints or a route. I've got Navigraph, so we can actually load this up for a second. And I've recently discovered the VFR charts on here, so that's great. So if I do this, we'll get rid of the flight window. Good, so I could put in some waypoints. Let's go Elopo, Lexa, and then on bed. So we can simply create our flight plan. If I go to flight plan, we'll start off by flying to Elopo. So push it in, and then we'll select it. This is obviously a astonishingly tedious process. I really don't like it. I would think it's very clever that they managed to fit this into a tiny little screen. I would obviously much prefer a keyboard. If I can remember my alphabet backwards, there we go. So Elopo, hit enter. And what I can do is, if I just close the flight plan for now, hopefully we'll see Elopo. There it is. So that's looking good actually. So flight plan, and then from Elopo, we're going to go to Lexa. And we'll just do the same thing. Okay, I've entered the waypoints and our destination airport, and now I can get it to fly the magenta line, which of course we all know and love, just coming through 23,000 feet there. So I'm going to bring the heading bug round, and as I say, I earlier pressed this button to send it onto nav mode, so it's flying the VOR radial, but what I can do is hit GPS, and now it flies the GPS. So our next course to fly is up here. If I hit OBS, there we go, from up the line. And I'm just going to bring the... Oh no, that's not what I want. Let's turn that off. I want to fly the actual magenta line. There we go. See, this is always beyond me. You can see that all these features are here if you would like them. We're going to need to come around quite sharp. I think if I go to... There we go. I've changed the display to our nav display of this style. So Lexa to onbed has a course of 3, 2, 1. Not that it really matters how you set this display. By the way, some of these dials, like other BlackSquare products, can actually get stuck, which is pretty cool, and you have to you can actually tap on them. See that? The VS needle just gives a little wobble. Love that. And you can see it vibrating there as the airplane vibrates and judders as we climb. Absolutely love that. Right, so yeah, we're now heading towards our line. You can see it's over there, and all I need to do now is hit nav mode again. And the airplane should fly us over to that magenta line, and then it's going to fly that route. You can see it's actually, annoyingly, it's sequenced all the way to that waypoint. They're all so close together. We're covering such good distance here. Anyway, hopefully this has reassured you. We're passing through 15,000 feet now. This airplane is more than capable of flying around long distance, high altitude if you want it to. And you can go onto airways quite comfortably with this and have fun. And like I say, using this navigation system for the sort of more RNAV stuff. Now I'm going to put it back into heading mode as we prepare. We'll descend down and fly just a visual approach into St. Barts. Now, something else, of course, a reason to enjoy having an airplane with two engines is that flying it over water like this is not quite as nerve-wracking. Look how close they are. I didn't realise they're this close, actually. there's St Martin when we started. But no, it's not. I'm talking nonsense. St Martin's straight in front of us. Ignore me. But yeah, it's something great about two engines. It's flying over water. You know, you've got more options, haven't you? It's something I do every day. I fly a long way over water, sometimes 3 hours from an airport in an aircraft with two engines. It's just a more normal thing to do. But what happens if one of those engines fails? Let's have a look. Got to talk about the sounds on this aircraft. As you can hear, those propellers whirring, getting in sync with each other, sound absolutely fantastic. Lots of different noises going on, and they are simulated very carefully to match what's going on with the physics simulation in the aircraft. Love the graphics of this airplane in flight. Those spinners look gorgeous. I really, really think they look spot on. Also, with the sun at this angle, we can see the rippling in the metal in the fuselage. I really like to see that as well. Look down the side of the fuselage there. That looks great. So we're about to mess around with engines. So let's just talk about the sounds because they're so closely related to the engine. One thing is, look how, I'm going to turn the sounds right up. Look how this little disc is spinning. That means the propellers aren't in sync. There's a slight variation in the speed, which could cause that sort of harmonizing wow, wow, wow noise. It's very annoying. So we have a propeller sync button, which does work. I say button switch, prop sync. And that engages and allows the aircraft within a certain tolerance to gently balance that out. It doesn't happen instantly, but it will improve until that stops spinning. Really cool. There you go, it's slowing down. Now if you listen carefully, you'll hear all sorts going on. Turn that off while we mess around. Just listen to all the different notes, pitch changes. All reacting to what I'm doing. Very, very cool. I think it's very good. And here we are, 18,000 feet. 2500 RPM. Yeah, I've been very impressed with the sounds in this aircraft all around. They've been really very, very good. So I want to shut down an engine. You could go into failures now and fail it in here. A whole list of failures, of course. BlackSquare, just so much detail going on. The list of details is very, very long. I can't possibly get through it all, but there you go. But let's just turn off an engine because I want to restart it. So you can see it's running hot, and if I just were to just cut off the mixture, what's going to happen is this engine will stop. We'll shut off the left engine as we can see it out our window here, and it will cool down rapidly, and we'll see all the other implications of that on this screen. But it's going to cause a big yaw, isn't it? The airplane's going to suddenly swing, and then it's going to be quite hard to keep it straight and level. What we need to do is then feather the propeller, and we can actually see the feathering accumulator up here to do that. So let me just shut off the fuel, and you'll see everything's cooled down immediately, and now it's going very, very cold. I can see here the manifold pressure is dropping. It's still high because the engine is spinning, but it's spinning because it's windmilling. The engine is off, the fuel flow is at 0, and that's the end of it. It's not providing us with any thrust, and you can see the aeroplane is, I can move the throttle, not having any effect. The autopilot is compensating for that dead engine by banking in towards it. So if I turn off the autopilot, this is what would have happened if we were manually flying. It just immediately tries to flip over onto its back and fly to the ground. So we're not going to let it do that. I'm going to roll it level. I'm going to turn off the flight director because it's just distracting now. And crucially, if we get rid of the tablet for a second, we can see that we have a lot of swing. The airplane is yawing, and it's yawing to the left. I need to put some right rudder in, so I can do that with my feet just to hold the rudder in. And that one live engine we've got, which is still just sitting at cruise thrust, remember, is there, but we're losing speed quickly, and we've got an awful lot of drag from this engine. So what we need to do is feather it. So we're going to bring the propeller lever, condition lever, back to the lowest RPM, the course, and then drive it to feather. And if we look in here, you'll see the feathering system pulling that oil out. That's driving it out, and now that propeller's feathered, which means it's pointing across the wind. So instead of windmilling now like it was, which causes a lot of drag, it's now just shut down, and it's much better, and you can see the pistons turning. I think that's really, really cool. And now a little less rudder needed, and you can see your rudder trim down here. so I can just trim it out. So rudder trim is what you're going to need in this case, not aileron. It's tempting because you might feel like you're having to bank to hold the airplane straight, but it's not what you need. You need rudder trim. The banking is a secondary effect. And we might find we can't stay up here at 18,000 feet. Certainly we've lost a lot of airspeed. So I'm going to begin a gentle descent now as well. Getting the rudder trim in as needed. And of course, as your airspeed changes and your power settings change, this will you'll need less and more rudder trim accordingly. For example, if I were to idle the current live engine, you'll see actually I've got too much rudder trim. I need to put left rudder in to keep the airplane coordinated using this little ball. So if the ball goes to the right, you need right rudder trim. If it goes left, you need left rudder trim. Anyway, let us let's idle that throttle, and we'll gently descend down as if we're sort of drifting down, which is something we would do in an airliner in this situation. I'll just balance it out. But yeah, so you can see there that we had a lot more drag from that, and it's all simulated. I like it a lot. I think BlackSquare has done a really great job of bringing that to life, and it feels pretty legitimate. So although TNTM's just over there, let's divert down into St. Barts, which is just over there. So we'll do a gentle drift down. And what I want to do as well is show you that you can obviously just restart the engine. If I provide it with fuel, and then I use the unfeathering accumulator, so if I drag this forwards, you'll see the propeller angle actually twist. It's turning more and more into wind. And if you have sufficient airspeed, and I drive it full forward, it's going to actually spring it to life. And because we left the magnetos on, and we provided it with fuel, it can actually just start up, and that's what it's done. You don't even need to run the starter because the magnetos are on, it's got fuel. And now I'm just going to reset my rudder trim, just put it back to the center. Don't need it. Airplane is back coordinated with two engines. Just going to run them at the same power. So yeah, overall, nice. Single engine handling is logical. It's quite pleasant actually, and you can quite simply trim it out and get to enjoy it as I would expect it to be. So here we are then, just coming in over St. Barts. We're just going to do a little flyby at 1,500 feet, get a sense of what we're about to try and do. There's a cruise ship coming in, love that. But yeah, we're going to land in on this easterly runway over here. I think the wind is coming slightly from the left. It's coming from the north at the moment. So it could be a little bit lumpy. But yeah, overall, hopefully you've seen a bit of a sense of the sounds, a bit of a sense of the handling of the airplane. Actually, what's worth trying is a quick stall. Let's give that a go. Now, this is not a great place to do it, but we'll go to idle, and I'll just hold the nose. You can hear the gear warning horn going off, complaining that we're idle with the gear up. And recovery for this will be nose down, immediate nose down. Add some power. There's a warner. Full back, and it's trying to drop a wing. The nose has dropped. I'm full back yoke. I should show you that. There's the yoke fully back. And it does try and drop that wing, so we'll lower the nose, get some power on, and bank gently away from there. Okay, there we go. Right, that was perhaps a little bit close to the ground to be doing that. But yeah, nice. Quite tricky, actually. It wants to drop a wing. You need to be careful as well with the yaw associated with if you were to bring on the power on one engine revved up quicker than the other, it could be quite difficult to recover. Because it could kick you into a spin as well. So something else to consider with these sorts of airplanes. Right, let's bring it in for a landing then. We're 1,000 feet, we're downwind, the runway's sort of back over our shoulder here. We're going to land in there. You can see there's some quite strong winds. Might need to reduce those a little bit to make this practical. We've got one stage of flap out, and that's 1,200 feet. So let's bring it around the corner, just zoom out, drop the landing gear, try and keep it at 1,200 feet. Around the turn here. I'm sure you're not meant to fly over these houses. I'm sure they'll be very annoyed with the noise of us whirring away, especially with our two engines making lots of noise. So round we come. This valley here, this little indent leads to our runway. Easy with the wind pushing us through here to get this a little bit wrong. I'm just going to raise the seat position slightly, just so we have a better view over the nose for the landing. Let's go full flap. Powering back. There's the runway. Right on our nose now. Now this is tricky. This is quite a fast airplane to do it in. That's my excuse anyway. Easy to float, so I'm just going to trim it right back on the speed. See if we can get a balance between having a nice slow speed and not stalling as we try and flare from the big drop. But there we go, coming in, absolutely awesome. What a privilege it would be to get to do this in real life. Any bit of power here, don't want to get slow, don't want to get pushed down into those hills. That would be bad news indeed. Scenery looking very nice in 2024 here. So coming in at 90 knots, can I squeeze a bit more out of that? I think we can. Nose feels nice and low, we're doing 500 feet per minute, it's all pretty reasonable. Okay. Now not too low over this ridge. It's a fine act, fine balancing act. We've all seen the YouTube videos. That's probably too low, but we didn't touch it. Idle. Down we go. Smooth into the flare. We're going to need maximum braking on touchdown. That's probably a bit late down that runway. Bet we'll have some time marks left after that. But there we go. We did make it in. Just about. Clipping the road almost. But there we go. That is a bit of an adventure in the rather lovely BlackSquare Baron from Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Have a bit of fun. I've just been running this engine high RPMs. That's still here on the runway, both of them actually, and I've now from high RPM, and I had them at lean mixture, so there's not much fuel going in, making the cylinders very hot. You can see these sort of purple temperatures, they're very, very hot. And then I just shut down the engine, and the engine life is dropping as we sit here. And you can also see the vapor lock. So this sort of spider's web in the middle has gone all red as the fuel has vaporized, and it's now pushing its way down the line. So we're at risk here of not being able to start the engines very easily. So I'm just going to turn on the battery master. Let's see if we can get the left engine going. So I'm going to open the throttle a bit, put the mixture to rich, prop fully forward. And let's look at the left engine while we do that. Hold it there. Can it do it? And you can see it's just not managing. That's great, because we've got this vaporized fuel just providing back pressure in the line. So it shows you what you can do to an engine if you're not careful with it. So that's all for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. This was the Beechcraft Baron from BlackSquare for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024. This has been 2024, of course. And it is, yeah, it's up to you what you think of it. I've really enjoyed my time with it, you can see. But this is very much an aircraft for those of you looking for this style of general aviation flying. I think people who know BlackSquare products and like them will know that they are probably already like this. This is of the same standard now as the Duke and Starship and so on. BlackSquare have done some fantastic aircraft in this category, and this is now yet another one. So there we go. There is also the Bonanza available in this this latest release, so either of those is out there now for you if you are interested in picking one up. That's all for today's video. There'll be plenty more videos, guides, live streams coming on the channel soon, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see those. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.